What's going on, guys? I hope this video finds you happy, healthy, and free from the coronavirus. When I started uploading videos to YouTube a little less than a year ago, one of the more popular videos that I uploaded was a video on how to do an epoxy inlay in a cutting board. And back then I was using a handheld router and a straight bit and just printing images off of Microsoft Word documents and using those as stencils and cutting them out by hand. Got a lot of positive feedback on that video. Also got a lot of feedback saying the audio quality was terrible. So over the past year I've been trying to increase the production value of these YouTube videos so that more people would want to watch them and find them interesting. So I hope you can see a difference in some of my earlier videos to today as far as the video quality and audio quality. So I'm going to try to redo that video today by doing an epoxy inlay in a couple sycamore cutting boards. I've got this beautiful slab. We're going to cut it up and get it ready to put in the CNC machine, and it's going to be a solid sycamore cutting board, no glue up or anything. I'm actually just going to cut the live edges off of this slab, square it up. Won't do a whole lot of finishing work until after we pour the epoxy into it. Probably run it through the planer a little bit just to make sure everything is nice and flat, and then we'll get it put in the CNC machine. And once we have a final size, we'll go ahead and create some files in Carbide Create so that we can start designing our epoxy inlay. Alright, so now that we got the live edges cut off and we got it squared up in the miter saw, we're ready to run it through the planer and make sure everything is flat. But before we can run it through the planer to get everything flat, we have to run it through the planer flat. So if I hold this corner down right here, we've got 3 corners making contact with the workbench, and this one is pretty high. I've already tested this piece and it seems like it's going to fit pretty good under there, which is basically just going to shim up this one corner so that we can run it through the planer. So we're just going to take a little CA glue . We're going to use some activator just to make sure that this doesn't take forever. You got to be quick about this though. This is going to shim this edge up in the planer. When you run it through the planer and then one side isn't flat, it's going to rock inside the planer. So now that we've got our material set up in the CNC machine, we're ready to go ahead and probe. The touch probe set up, the alligator clip is on the bit. We will go to probe. We're going to probe the corner. We're already set up for the 1/8 inch end mill. We'll go ahead and start that. That was a successful probe, so we'll go ahead and move this stuff off to the side. And now we are ready to run our program. So we will go back over to run. I've already got the file loaded in. We're going to do the T, which is the pocket for the capital T that's going to go in the middle of the cutting board. It's going to take about 20 minutes to do it. We're going to go ahead and hit start and then turn on our router. Now that we've taken it out of the CNC machine, we're ready to pour the epoxy. I went ahead and went over everything with light sandpaper and then blew the dust out of the cracks with an air hose. Since the customer who ordered these gave me full creative liberties, I decided to go with black onyx and battleship gray mica powder from Black Diamond Pigments. I think it's going to look really awesome in this sycamore. After you get the epoxy poured, you want to go over it with some heat to pop all of the air bubbles and make sure that you don't have any air pockets. You want to be careful not to use too much heat when you're doing this because you can change the chemical composition of the epoxy. And you actually want this kind of epoxy to cure slowly. And if you apply heat to it, it can actually cure too fast, and you don't want that. After the epoxy cured for 24 hours, I took each of the cutting boards and ran them through the planer a few times, and then just gave them a light sanding. I then used some CA glue to fill in the wormholes and the cracks. I'm using these little blocks of wood as stops for the router so that I can make the finger grooves. Here I'm using a 3/8 roundover bit on all of the edges. The sanding process that I use for all of my cutting boards is 80, 120, 180, and 220. On my epoxy cutting boards I take that a step further and I go all the way up to 320 in the palm sander, and then I hand sand at 600, 1200, and 1500. And that's when I start using the micro mesh pads that go all the way up to 12,000 grit.
Thank you.
Nothing ever leaves my shop that I wouldn't be proud to put my name on. Sorry about the focus. I think conditioning the wood is probably one of every woodworker's favorite parts. There's just something special about seeing that grain come alive. Hey, that's a different board. Yeah, I forgot to hit record whenever I flipped the turley cutting board over to condition the front side, so luckily I was making two of these, so you get to see the epoxy conditioned on this one. But here's the finished product of the turley cutting board. It turned out very nice. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.